Episode 7, One Big Team podcast. Super excited and grateful to be sitting with a friend, someone who I've learned a lot from. I am joined today by Ryan Rogers, the athletic director at Independence High School here in Loudoun County, Virginia. And Ryan has a wealth of knowledge about the athletic experience from a lot of different perspectives, from coaches, parents, ADs, and the student athlete experience. So there's many things that we can learn and pull on to benefit from. And I'm really excited to dive into it. Thank you for being here, my friend.
Perfect. I love it.
Yeah, right on, man. So getting to know you over the past few years, I have an understanding of your trajectory and as a coach and how you've ended up as an athletic director at one of the best high schools in the region. Can you, for the listeners, kind of give that background of, maybe even starting with the sports that you played up until now?
Yeah, for sure. A longtime athlete, started sports when I was a young kid. My dad was a huge part of that, and he never missed an event. He missed one wrestling match in my whole career. Again, I played baseball, football, ran cross country for a couple of years, so I kind of had a broad range of sports that I participated in, and enjoyed my high school experience. Coming out of high school, had some college aspirations. They didn't exactly work out for me, but I still kept up with intramural sports and things. Then got into teaching, got into a wrestling room, was asked by, a couple friends, the Paterio brothers, which are also athletic directors in the area. So went, hung out in the Broad Run wrestling room for a couple months, and then Briarwoods and Freedom opened. And a friend at the time encouraged me to get involved. I applied for both the jobs, thought I was going to Freedom with him. Went and interviewed with the Briarwoods athletic director, Mr. Brettig, who's a longtime legend in the county and a huge part of Loudoun County athletics from early on. I actually applied for the JV position, and we interviewed, and he's like, "I've got good news and bad news." And I was like, "Well, what's the good news?" Well, he's like, "The good news is you're either my head coach or no coach." And I was like, "Sir, I've never really coached a day in my life." And he'll like, rest is kind of history with, I had a couple state champs. We did a lot of great things. In the 9 years that I was there, we had 147 wins, which was a lot. We were 33-3 and at one time. A lot of success, and I learned a lot through my coaching career. The ups and the downs, and as I told him, I'd never coached before, and and I got a team mom, and I'm like, "Okay, team mom," and she's like, "Well, what are we gonna do for spirit wear and food?" And I was like, "What are those?" I don't spirit wear, and so she had to explain what spirit wear was to me, and food wrestlers don't eat, So again, I was given some grace. That's what I will tell you. I was given some grace back in the day. I had a lot of people that surrounded me, great people, great athletes. But when I started, I didn't have any wrestlers that even knew how to wrestle. I think I got 2 kids from Stonebridge when Briarwoods opened that had ever seen a wrestling.
Wow.
So we had a lot of hard work to put in. And by the time that, those freshmen became seniors, we qualified 7 kids for the state tournament and a couple state place winners. And that was back when it was 3 divisions. It was a little bit more difficult than it is with the 6 divisions now that we have in Virginia. But it was it was a great experience. So that's kind of leading up to them being an athletic director. I was kind of done with teaching. I taught 2nd and 3rd grade. And I was looking for something different and was exploring some sales jobs, things to kind of branch out from education. And the Heritage assistant AD job opened up, and it kind of ties into a lot what we'll probably talk about today. It's not always what you know, it's who you know.
Sure.
And I happened to play softball probably 15 years previous to that with Ron Petrella, who is the athletic director. He had a lot of great candidates. I really didn't think that I had opportunity or chance at that job. And he rolled the dice and picked me. 2 years later, I was the athletic director there for 2 years. Sat next to my best friend, JJ Totaro, who is still the athletic director at Heritage. He does great things over there, great human being. We still talk almost daily. He is like a brother. And then Independence opened. And so I'll be honest with you, I loved Heritage.
Mhm.
The administration there was great. Everybody was great. Again, I stated I sat next to my best friend.
Yeah.
I really had no intentions of even applying at the Independence job, to be honest with you. And you'll find that wives are very convincing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And she sat down that Sunday before we knew the principal, Mr. Gabriel, was picking his applicants and said, listen, we're a big sports family. If you can stand going over to Heritage and being AD there and supporting their athletics, and your whole family's going to be at Independence,
Yeah.
then don't apply.
Mm,
Um, Needless to say, I
sure.
had my application in that night, and
Yeah.
the rest is history.
Yeah.
So
And been a great run.
It's been a great ride. You know, opening a new school is different.
What year did you guys open?
2019.
Yeah.
Yeah. So 2018, July 1, you go in, you have a whole year essentially to plan
Hmm.
to open up a school. So it was just Mr. Gabriel and myself and a bookkeeper at the time. It was just the three of us.
Wow.
Up until December. Then we hire an AP. So we did all the hiring, from coaches to department chairs, APs. Mr. Gabriel and I initially did all those things up front together. So it built a great relationship between he and I, because we didn't know each other before we embarked on this adventure together.
Gosh, what a unique piece to that. You see a school open, don't even look and consider what's going on behind the doors. And, just even before the students walk on campus a whole year before, there's the leaders of that institution sitting there and planning and starting to build the framework of the culture. And it's pretty cool. And I've walked through those halls before, and it seems like it's an environment that was built with a lot of intention.
Yeah. Well, and we were lucky. I mean, the name of the school, Independence, it led to one of the best color schemes out there.
Yeah.
The red, white, and blue. And we got community input on everything, to include our mascot.
Yeah.
Mr. Gabriel and I actually wanted a different mascot, the two of us.
What did you want?
We wanted Cavaliers.
Okay, got it.
Playing in the VA,
Yep.
all that stuff. And we thought that'd be.
Mhm.
But the kids wanted Tigers.
Cool.
And to this day, I am very thankful that
Sure.
we now are the Tigers and not the Cavaliers.
Yep.
And so then we started branding the whole school, and I think one of our logos is the best
Super
around.
cool.
I mean, the tiger with the IHS built into it. It kind of looks like the stripes, and there's people that don't even see that until you tell them.
Yep.
So that whole experience of opening a school is an adventure.
Yes.
And obviously it turned out to be super cool.
There's like a little theme there, like from the first job of wanting the JV position and then ascending to the head coaching position, and then being part of building a school essentially, and kind of just the opportunities. And you said, but obviously those people saw skills in you and saw potential in you. And this one theme, this story that I remember that had a big impact on me, I'm not going to go into the details, but essentially it was the theme of invite people into their potential, invite people into service, invite them into that opportunity for them to really rise up. And it seems like the athletic director Breyer did that for you with the coaching position, maybe the same thing as the AD position, and then at Independence. What do you think about that concept? How did those people believing in you help you grow? I'm sure you've done that for coaches too. Like, what do you think about that concept about inviting people into their full potential?
Well, I think that is obviously a huge part of coaching.
Yeah.
When you're dealing with young adolescents, there's a lot more that goes into coaching than what people see. A lot of the fans sit in the stands and they just see the product on the field.
Yes.
They don't recognize that it takes the whole picture. You have to be part of their family. You have to worry about their academics. You have to worry about what are they doing socially, which is very difficult in this region. So I think that ties a lot into what has made us successful. Is we try to get the best potential out of everybody. Yeah. So I have very high expectations of our coaches, and then our coaches have very high expectations of our athletes.
Yeah.
And that is part of the winning model that we've had for sure.
Yeah. It's, you're right. That is the sport experience. Coach looking at someone going, hey, I believe in you, and I'm going to hold you to this standard. I'm going to call you up, and giving them the opportunities to have success, to fail, to learn, to grow. And I also agree completely. Yes. Fans and parents can forget so quickly when there's a scoreboard going and it's competitive, just how much is at play. And I know we had a conversation before when you were coaching wrestling, how important the principles of what you were doing, how that was everything to you, the character development, things like that. Can you go into your wrestling coach early in your career, throughout it, how you prioritize character development, put it at the forefront, and then how you saw it lead to success?
Right. But that I used to have a parent meeting, as most coaches do, right up front, and I would sit all the parents down and say, "Listen, we all want to win. I want your kids to be successful in this sport, but at the end of the day, I felt my job was to make these young men become men
Mhm.
and to be productive members of society,
Yeah.
good husbands, good
Yeah.
fathers, and just good people.
Yes.
And so that's really what I strove for when I was coaching
Yeah.
was if I can get these guys to buy in and be good humans,
Yes.
the winning and all that portion
Yes.
comes with that. So I held very high standards. I mean, I tell the story all the time. There's very rare that I put the best 14 people on the map
Mhm.
because kid might not have gotten good grades or a
Yeah.
kid might have been disrespectful to a teacher
Yep.
or things like that. And I held everybody accountable. I
Yeah.
mean, at one point I sat one of my state place winners. He missed weight. We almost lost the duel. I could have easily bumped him up, bumped
Yeah.
somebody else that had earned that spot out.
Yeah.
We knew he was better. But I sat him right next to me for the whole duel and
Yeah.
was in his ear the whole time,
Yeah.
telling him that, you could let down your team.
Yeah.
And that just, when you do things like that, it sends a message across your
Yes.
program,
Yes.
that you, you got to meet the standards. If you
Yeah.
don't meet the standards and you're not going to do the right thing, then, this is an extracurricular activity.
Yeah.
It's, you have to earn the right to put on the uniform. And I think that a lot of that is lost in today's society and stuff.
Mhm.
Everybody thinks that this is just a given, that you make a team and you get equal playing time and things like that. And that's not always the way it works.
Yeah. I completely agree. So one things when I was getting ready for this, I was like, I can't wait to learn more from you. And you've held a seat of perspective to see so much of the journey from a coaching perspective. You've worked with different students in different generations. You've worked with parents and coaches, and you were an athlete. How much reverence do you have for the sport experience? Like you said, you want to see people become better human beings. I believe that sport, and a lot of people do, it is one of the most important vehicles that has the potential to do that. How much does that mean to you? And you have clarity that like this experience, the student athlete experience, can change people's lives and then therefore make them better leaders in communities and in their house.
Right. Well, this really goes to even something that, back to my wife. She hires a lot of people and she gets a lot of different applications and trying to sort through some of that. Yeah. Everybody has a 4.0 GPA and everybody graduates from a UVA and applying to these things. What trickles applications up to the top for her are athletes.
Yeah.
And in particular wrestlers,
Yeah.
because, it takes a lot of discipline to manage everything.
Yes.
There's a lot of distractions in today's society.
Yeah.
Distractions that I didn't have, you just started to have, with social media and
Yes.
things like that. I didn't have those distractions. I grew up in a small town. All we had was my brothers and to go and lift and train and ride our bikes around the town. And the kids, especially in this area, don't have a lot of that. So they have to then, how are we going to manage this whole situation?
Yeah.
How are we going to go and train with Mabry? How are we going to get good grades?
Yeah.
How are we going to meet the expectations in the
Yes.
family? And then at the end of the day, how are we going to put in all this time to then participate in athletics?
Yeah.
So I think it speaks volumes that these kids have this opportunity to come and play and work really, really hard. And putting on a jersey at Independence High School is not easy.
Yeah.
We have unfortunately had to cut athletes that would possibly participate at other schools because the programs are so strong.
Yeah.
So it takes all that stuff into account.
Yeah. And it's not like you said, it's not a given to be able to play sports. I think sometimes, Northern Virginia, an incredible area. I'm so thankful to grow up here. It is a bubble. We are privileged to have so many incredible things. And I do think that at times we take for granted just how lucky we are to go play sports and to go compete at an environment in an athletic department where people really care. And this aspect of getting the most out of the sport experience, what are some athletes or maybe coaches that were younger and you mentored them, or athletes that you saw grow up that you're like really proud of? Or when you think about, oh man, these are the character traits that I'm most proud of for this group of wrestlers that I coach, or these students that I saw go from freshmen to seniors. So kind of the outcome of the sport experience. What are those like? Maybe if you have some people or some examples, or what you want it to look like at the end of this upcoming year in 2025, when that class graduates, you're able to go, wow, that kid, that girl, this group, really proud of them.
Yeah, I think a lot of times when you would have these conversations, people would gravitate towards some of their best athletes.
Yeah.
The best athletes, they have that athletic ability. They have that inner drive. They're the ones that are putting in that work. You know, what I love, and I love it across all sports, is the underdog.
Mhm.
The kid, and I had plenty of them, and I'm not going to go through a bunch of names, but kids that really needed help.
Yeah.
They needed wrestling.
Mhm.
They needed that in their life, whether it was their home life wasn't great, their grades weren't great. The motivation and things that we were able to instill in them was greater
Yes.
than everything else.
Yeah.
And so it really taught them then again to be productive members of society.
Yes.
And, I've got kids that have went on to be doctors. I've got kids that have went into the military and done great things. Have kids that have went to the academies.
Yeah.
Those are the kids that I'm most proud of. And maybe they didn't win every match, but
Yes.
but that's okay. I had a heavyweight back in the day, and if he watches this, he'll chuckle because we still joke about this story. His junior year, he was just not a great wrestler.
Mhm.
And he and I stood at the doors of right at tryout day, and I was trying to recruit anybody that looked like a heavyweight to come in. I did it with him sitting right next to me. There was intention.
Yep.
I was like, hey, this kid's terrible. Come on in.
Yeah,
Give it a shot. You can beat him.
Yeah.
And that motivated him
Yeah.
to get better.
Yeah.
And then he ended up being a great wrestler,
Yeah.
and then got a great government job.
Yeah.
He worked in Australia for a couple of years. I just caught up with him a couple of weeks ago. Those kids, they're like my sons. I mean, I still keep in touch with them and stuff like that. When it comes to independence, unfortunately, I lose a little bit of that sitting in my seat.
Yes.
I mean, you see me, I'm on the sidelines of almost everything.
Yes.
That said, I don't get to build those true relationships like my coaches. So I have to trust them.
Yeah.
And what I'll tell you is I meet with my coaches all the time. I mean, we sit, we talk, we have conversations, and I don't know much about lacrosse.
Yeah.
And the lacrosse is a new kind of sport to me. We actually didn't even have that where I grew up.
Yeah.
So, but Coach Woodring and I talk all the time.
Yeah.
And, what I appreciate about him is he, really puts in the effort. He
Yes.
really wants to try to build that team family atmosphere. And that's the conversations that we're having. Conversations of, hey, this athlete has done X, Y, and Z. We need to redirect his thinking into what is our overall goal at the end of the day. So I really kind of get to do that from that end compared to me having that real true effect.
Yeah.
On the kids.
Sure. I think just a natural progression there, and now in a really big leadership position where your perspective, your ability to frame, like you just said, let's redirect this to pour into those coaches, has a huge reach, and sometimes probably not in the tangible way that you did in the beginning of your career, but ways that I can easily see. And that's one of the reasons I want to have this conversation. I told you before with the academy, I've had a lot of conversations with athletic directors, and unfortunately, there are less athletic directors that sound like you, and they're not all about the student athlete experience. And they frankly said, yeah, this is going to add more work to our plate. We're not interested. And one of the things that I've always gathered from you is you are really trying to build the best experience possible for your students. And it was inspiring to me. And so I just, that acknowledgement there, doing a lot of really good things. I'm curious, what have you learned, from some of these coaches over the years, right? Because every coach has their own philosophy. They build on their philosophy. They have their strengths, they have their weaknesses. Is there anything that really stands out to you, as a continuous learner, where you're like, man, I mean, I'm sure there is probably all the time some nuggets of wisdom or just perspectives, things that you've picked up in the past few years, maybe from coaches?
But again, I think a lot of it is the grace. I think that we lack grace, especially here, as you stated, in our bubble of
Yeah.
Northern Virginia. While we have a lot of support, we don't give a lot of grace.
Yeah.
And especially with our young coaches and stuff, it takes time to
Yes.
build programs. It takes time to learn to coach. You know, I've been blessed at Independence. I have coaches that have coached for 25 plus years.
Yeah.
A lot of my, big sports coaches, they've been around forever.
Mhm.
Coach McDonald is a perfect example. What I appreciate about him is he has a lot of the same perspectives and things that we've talked about.
Yeah.
He's really heavy on the grades. He's really heavy on the respect. And he has taught me how to, really see what it takes to put together a great program. I mean, this past year is a perfect example of his program. We had one senior, and the expectations coming off from a state title team, a state runner-up team. We had high expectations as a baseball program, but we didn't have the upperclassmen that we thought could make that happen.
Sure.
And you fast forward, and he's district champ.
Yep.
And one win away from another state title, which would have been his fourth in 4 years. A state berth, I should say.
Sure.
So he is just one of those coaches that you show up in baseball pants, and that is not just kids, that's the coaches.
Yeah.
He holds every single person that steps on that baseball field or puts on Independence jersey, he holds them to the same exact standard. I appreciate that.
Yes.
And that just builds that winning culture, and you get kids that will run through brick walls for you and overperform.
Yeah.
And that's always kind of the goal is when you have high schools, you're dealing with your attendance zone.
Yeah.
And then you're also dealing with, there could be 10 different baseball programs that he's trying to now pull these teams together and mesh into Independence baseball.
Yeah.
And a lot of our coaches struggle with those things.
Sure.
It's favoritism and this and that. And he's one of those coaches that he throws that all out the window.
Yeah.
The best players with the best attitudes, with the best buy-in to the program, those are the athletes that are going to go out there and compete for Independence High School. It's a baseball program. And again, he's taught me a lot over the years of kind of how to build that winning tradition.
Yeah. There's a perspective that you shared with me multiple times, and it's something that I've taken and shared with parents, and you call it, winning at the dinner table. And I think this concept of standards, very clear. Coaches has standards for his coaching staff. AD has standards for coaches, goes down to the students. And I think now we're getting more into the awareness of community, right? And obviously, they say for every game, stands, you're representatives of the school, be respectful, fans, please. And then the parenting experience I know is difficult. I know it can be very challenging for a lot of people. And the way that you teach this philosophy, I think really simplifies it. And when I share with people, they're like, yeah, okay, I get that. Can you talk about winning at the dinner table and what that means to you?
Yeah. Again, it's something that in my initial parent meeting that we have at the beginning of every season, I have a whole slide on it. Where does winning begin? And how do we win? And it all starts at the dinner table. And, I try to explain to them that if you're positive about our coaches, and you're positive about the administration, and you're positive about the school, and you're positive about the program, we can do a whole lot of winning. But the thing that you really have to be positive about is your athlete.
Yeah.
Your athlete, they know if they underperform. They know if they had a bad game.
Yes.
It all starts with the car ride home. You don't need to talk about that. You want to go grab a sandwich at Phil and Co.
Yeah.
There is a time and a place where when kids underperform, where you have to address it, of course. The car ride home is not the point.
Yep.
The dinner table is that's not the correct forum to do something like that. So I think that that's what we've preached at Independence, is all winning's done at the dinner table, but we've also preached family.
Yeah.
And, I live in this community. I've lived in the community for almost 15 years now, which is a blessing and a curse all at the same time. It's a blessing because when I look out into the stands, or I look out when I'm doing any sort of presentation, I see tons of people that I know.
Yeah.
all those people also have my cell phone number.
Sure,
So,
sure, sure.
you know, I'm not going to say I don't get a text at 10 o'clock at night
Yep,
when
yep.
something's went awry. But we've really built a culture based on family.
Yeah.
And I think that that's really has made us the most successful.
Yeah.
You need to have great coaches. You have to have great athletes. If you
Yeah.
don't have those two things, it doesn't matter at the end of the day what you really say or do.
Yeah.
But we at Independence, and it's Independence as a whole, our theater program is
Yes.
phenomenal.
Yep.
Our band program is
Yep.
phenomenal. We're one of the best academic schools, you know, in the state of Virginia. So when you walk the halls and you look at the trophy cases, it's not just athletics.
Yes.
It's everything. And that's what, when Mr. Gabriel and I sat down and discussed, you know, what we were going to do, and he got to do this twice because he
Yeah.
opened John Champ. And he did a great job at John Champ, but he also knew that there was things that he didn't do the best
Yeah.
and things that we could change. And the two of us together were able to put together kind of this package where I always say it's like a three-legged stool. And if you take out one leg,
Yeah.
you know, if you take out fine arts, people don't look at Independence the same.
Sure.
If you take out athletics, they don't look at it the same.
Yeah.
Take out academics, they don't look at it the same. And so we built the stool.
Yep.
We built a really sturdy stool.
Yeah.
It's made us very successful.
Yeah. I'm curious how close we're here in 2024. School opens, you know, July 1st, 2018. You're there in the building, you, Mr. Gabriel, the bookkeeper, you're putting out the vision, maybe on a whiteboard or on paper. Yep. How close is current reality to the vision?
I'd say it's very close. You know, when I first got hired, Mr. Gabriel and I met with the community probably within a month.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, we're working on our slides together. And I presented a slide of the movie of "You build it, they will come."
Mm-hmm.
And so we kind of ran with that kind of philosophy.
Sure.
It all ties into that.
Yeah.
You know, if you build a culture and you build a place that people want to be and don't have to be, then the sky's the limit.
Yes.
And so that's really kind of what we've tried to build at Independence, is a place that people want to come.
Yep.
They don't have to come there.
Yes. Yes.
I'm zoned to go to Independence. I don't really want to go to Independence. You know, I would say the vast majority of students that step into the building, whether they're an athlete or not, they want to be at Independence High School because it feels good when they walk through the front door.
Yeah, I agree. I think the time that I've spent over there, just from again, you know, the way that it feels walking through the halls, spending time with those student athletes, it definitely has that energy about it, which it's cool to sit here and just, again, a lot of people, I fall guilty of myself. I had a friend on named Wayne Sasso. He's a mental skills coach for the Army Police Department. And he had a big career change where he went and got a job with the Air Force. And I remember watching him make that change years ago. And I just assumed it was easy. I'm like, oh, what a great promotion. Good for him, man. How cool. And on the show, he was like, it was the hardest time of my life. And so to hear, you know, what went on behind the scenes is always really interesting to get a perspective of. One Big Team podcast is powered by Mabry Academy. We are the leaders in comprehensive player and personal development. We are experts in preparing you today for where you want to be tomorrow. We have two big programs. We have our lacrosse program where we run comprehensive one-on-one long-term coaching, college roadmap program, and the best group training in the country, specifically right here in the DMV area. And then we also have our mental performance department, where we also work in a one-on-one capacity with teams, schools, and club organizations. And we have multiple virtual programs that you can access right now. Please check out MabryAcademy.com if you are looking to up your game and take it to the next level. Appreciate you. I think behind the scenes, you've also had a front row seat to student athletes' mental states. Okay. So when I can think back to what it was like when I was in high school, there has been an increase in mental health struggles. And there's this layer of pressure that a lot of people feel. And you're right, car ride home, that can be a place that enhances, and it can be a place that brings support and what we want. And the dinner table can be a place that helps solve problems. And that's what we're all moving towards. You know, like, how has the student athlete experience changed? And from like a pressure standpoint and what they're going through today versus 5, 10, 15 years ago.
Right. Well, I think, again, what's changed is really social media. So social media is a blessing and a curse. And it really just depends on how you adapt to social media.
Mm-hmm.
You know, back in our day, if we had a beef with somebody, you had to do that be face to face.
Yeah.
And it's different having
Yeah.
to be face to face or making up a fake screen name and
Yeah.
then berating somebody
Yeah.
online. So I would say social media, and then you tie in COVID.
Yeah.
I mean, COVID was a really tough time for everybody.
Yeah.
You know, when you go from, and especially you look at Independence, we had a very successful fall season.
Yep.
We had a very successful winter season. We had really high hopes for spring.
Yeah.
Our kids come out, they practice for 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Maybe we have a scrimmage, and then boom, the world shuts down. And so when you take away everything that these kids knew,
Yeah.
and then essentially lock them indoors,
Yep.
I think that that's a lot of what we're seeing in today's youth.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
you know, especially when it comes to an athletic standpoint. Now, again, my staff did a great job.
Yeah.
They did a lot of videos and Zoom meetings,
Yep.
and they got together at different facilities, you know, employed at Evergreen, so
Yep.
that they could participate and help coach.
Yep.
And so some of these, you know, after a couple months, these facilities started to open back up. And
Yes.
one of our most successful seasons was 21 when we came out of COVID,
Yeah.
and a lot of our athletes had still been training
Yeah.
and been going out to facilities
Yeah.
and working on their game.
Mhm.
And I think that that really helped us. So this is a tough time to grow up.
Yeah,
I
no
don't,
doubt.
I don't
Yeah.
think I'd want to grow up in the society as we
Yeah.
see it today.
Yes.
It's just, it's difficult.
Yeah.
Things, I would say things were simple.
Yeah.
When I was an athlete and growing up, you know, my biggest worry was getting home on time, and you know, what was my mom going to make for
Yeah.
dinner?
Yeah.
These kids, you know, and I have 2 student athletes
Yeah.
at home, very high level cheerleaders, and it's rare that we even sit down and have a meal together.
Yeah.
You know, they're off at trainings,
Yep.
or
Yep.
they're off with their friends, or off doing things. So we kind of have lost the dinner table
Yeah.
to a certain degree in
Sure.
today's society, because we're busy.
Yes.
You know, we live in an area where financially it's hard.
Yeah.
And so a lot of both parents are working.
Yep.
Or parents have other things going on. And
Yeah.
so they might not be as present
Yes.
as say our parents were.
Yep.
You know, my dad was home at 4 o'clock every day.
Yeah.
You know, he worked a job where it was 8 to 4,
Yep.
and he was home.
Yeah.
So we got to interact a lot.
Yep.
You know, in this job, I'm sitting here saying it. That's what I have. I mean,
Yep.
there's a lot of times that I work from 8, 9 in the morning until
Yep.
10 o'clock at
Yep.
night. The only time that I might see my family is if they happen to come over for a game.
Yeah.
So it's just, it's a tough place to live.
Sure.
And I think that it just culminates into the mental health and stuff
Yes.
for these kids.
Yeah. Absolutely.
They're kind of left to their own devices.
No doubt.
You know, so we try to mentor them through
Yes.
our coaches and our departments
Yes.
and their friends and those things. And, but I know it's difficult and hard on parents.
Yeah. And I think this is why the student athlete and a just great student experience is so important, because the connection, the relationships, what we learn from these relationships, the conversations that we have every day with a teacher, with a mentor, go such a long way in the way that we perceive our experience. And these challenges, to me, what I like to think about with this generation and what's going on is, man, we have an opportunity to really help develop some incredible leaders, some young people that have gone through some really challenging, some really wonky times. They never were given a choice whether they should have social media or not. They just were vulnerable kids, and the adults in the room weren't paying attention, and we gave them these devices that have made things a lot more difficult to navigate, but also a lot of power in those tools and the way that we can create change quickly. So I choose to believe and be really optimistic about it, but I am reminded often, but at times I need to remind myself how difficult it is.
Yep.
Because it's like, oh, well, it wasn't that hard when I did it. And you're like we have a different experience, and we have to really listen and then look and go, wow, their brains are different than our brains. You know, the world is different. They don't see things through our eyes. But I want to move towards the direction of, you know, when you get challenged, that's how you grow. When you're out of your comfort zone, that's when you get better. When you go through a little bit of suffering and you learn the lessons, you come out of it a better person.
Right.
Really trying to move in that direction, because if we do, I think the future of our country and the world is going in a much better direction, and a lot more empathy and a lot more mental skills and just sound leadership. That's the only direction. I have no other
Yeah.
alternative. We're only going in that way.
Well, and that's right. And I heard something 2 weeks ago from my brother-in-law, and I thought it was genius. And he does a lot of public speaking, and kind of gives this message: is don't look at anything as a failure. Nothing is a failure. It's a loss.
Yeah.
You lost. You lost that
Mhm.
day. You lost that match. You lost that game. Where are you going from the loss?
Yeah.
You didn't fail. And I thought, oh, wow, that's something that I'm actually going to come and bring and tie in.
Absolutely.
That we all have losses. We all have bad days. We all have things that have happened in our lives that at the moment felt like the worst thing that could ever happen.
Yeah.
And we overcame them.
Yes.
We learned from that loss.
Oh, absolutely.
We, a lot of athletes and stuff, they just, failure is not the option. How can I grow and learn from a mistake I made?
Yeah.
And I think that that's really what we have to get back to.
Yes.
We have to get back to that form of
Yeah.
a message. Not being so hard on the kids, not acting like this is the end of the world. Nothing's the end of the world.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, we can make it past most things.
Yes. Yeah.
But I feel like, especially in this area, we're hard on these kids.
Mhm.
Really, really hard. The pressure, even to get into college. I'm going through
Yeah.
that now with my eldest. It's a 4.3 GPA, all the accolades, all the things. And we met with like someone that helps with planning out college the other
Yeah.
day, and she's looking at the University of Florida with a 4.3 GPA. She falls within the top 89%. That's 89%. Like 89% of the people that go to Florida have a 4.3 GPA. It's just mind-boggling.
Yeah, very
and so getting into a school is difficult. So
Mm.
I think that it's a lot of, we don't look at the perspective, as you said, from these kids
Mm.
and all the pressures and things that they already have on them.
Yeah.
And now we are continuing to pile on
Yeah.
and have expectations. And I had this frank conversation with my daughter, 6 months or so ago. She a little upset about some things that were going on, and she's like, I don't know if I want to cheer in college. And I was like, okay.
Yeah.
Like, oh, but you and mom are going to be so upset. We've done all these things. I was like, we did all these things for you because that was your goal. And
Mhm.
our job as a parent is to try to help you meet your goals. If your goal is to not cheer in college and you don't want to cheer, totally fine.
Yeah.
I don't know if I want to go down south to college. Fine.
Yeah.
George Mason. Honey.
Yeah.
You and mom. No, this isn't you and mom. It's not dad and mom.
Yeah.
This is your path. This is your journey.
Yeah.
This is something that you have to go and work hard for, whatever your goal is, and then tell us.
Yeah.
And your mom and I are going to help you along the way.
Yeah.
That's part of parenting.
Yes.
Which is not easy.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think there's that sweet spot for teenagers, students, to give them autonomy, to give them, hey, you're in the driver's seat, you got this. But we also need to really do a really good job of creating a right environment for that, and then giving them the support when needed, when necessary. And I think, again, wanting to see this next generation become great leaders and invest in them and to support them, and the student athlete experience helps so much. The concept of failure. There's so many ways to look at that and to grow from it and not fear it, but many people do. I had Alan Stein Jr. on the podcast last week, and he said, I'm embarrassed to admit that I've achieved almost every goal I ever set for myself. And then I realized it's because I set the bar so low and I was so afraid of failure. And it took him to be 45 years old before he started setting appropriate goals. And I've talked to many players who have that deep fear of failure, but learning a skill like that, being a part of a team that says, no, it's not failure, it's lessons learned, it's growth, it's data, it's feedback. This is the pathway to get better. It's just one loss. And we learn from our losses. And I agree. The challenges, when we lose a tough game, we're working with the team. I just go, listen, guys, I've lost some games. I remember how my last college game ended, chasing a guy, trying to get a ball back that, even if you get the ball back, you're still going to lose. Other fans are yelling at me, York College. I hate those guys. They're yelling at me. They knew it was my last game. They're brutal way to end the career.
Right.
But I use that. God, I use that so well to my advantage going forward. I never wanted kids to experience. So I worked super hard. I became a better person, better coach. What are some of those things for you? Maybe it was when you were an athlete, when you were competing, or early in your coaching career, or as an AD. Like, what were some of those losses, those challenges that you can now look back and go, God, I'm proud of the person I am today because of the way I navigated that loss?
What I will tell you is actually how I didn't navigate a loss.
Mm.
Is kind of how the trajectory for me was very odd. In high school you can get 12 varsity letters. That's the most you can get. 4 seasons, 3 sports a season.
Mhm.
I have 11. The one I'm missing is wrestling my senior year. So I was on top of the world. I had beat the kid that they had ranked number 2 in the state.
Mm.
We were at a big tournament. I was rolling through the bracket. We're in the semifinals. I'm up pretty big on this kid. We go out of bounds. He ref blows whistle. I relax. He throws me on my shoulder. I dislocate my shoulder. That was back in the day when wrestling, you could lose a lot of weight. And I was playing football at 180 and I was wrestling 140.
Wow.
And so that 3 to 4 week period that I was recovering from an injury, I had trouble maintaining my weight.
Yeah.
I came back. I was undefeated at the time, lost to a freshman. I was like, that was a couple hours down the road, whatever it was, what it was. And then wrestling in northern Pennsylvania, that's kind of the king.
Mhm.
You'll see more people at a wrestling match than you would a football game.
Wow.
And we went and wrestled a rival school, and I lost to an athlete that I should have never lost to.
Mhm.
And I literally walked off the mat. I walked in the locker room. I took off all my stuff. I folded it. I set it next to my coach, and I went and sat in the stands. And I never competed in my favorite sport ever
Wow.
again. And I was just a young, dumb kid.
Yeah.
And obviously my dad tried everything. My coach was at my house that evening. I mean, they tried to tell me that I was going to regret that decision.
Yeah.
And 5 years, 8 years, 10 years. Yeah, I always look back and say, yeah, I've accomplished a lot of great things. I have great wife, 2
Mhm.
beautiful kids, great career.
Mhm.
I say there's no job that's built better for Ryan Rogers than, athletics. But I still reflect back on it.
Mhm.
And I share that story with a lot of athletes that
Yeah.
are down on themselves
Yes.
or want to quit.
Yeah.
And I was like, you're going to come back to me in 10 years. You're going to say, Coach Rogers, I made a mistake.
Mhm.
And I'm trying to have you avoid, because
Yeah.
that's our job.
Yes.
Is we have those losses, again, not failures. We had those losses.
Yep.
And what did we learn from them? But if I came back, maybe I wasn't sitting here.
Mhm.
Sure.
No doubt.
You just never know. And I say it all the time. I'm blessed because when I coached, I got to live through a whole bunch of my athletes.
Mhm.
Now sitting in this seat, I still get butterflies. It's one
Totally.
of my favorite things is, that butterfly feeling that you want to puke. You feel like you're going to puke.
Yeah.
And I get that all the time watching these kids, because I know the effort that they put in. I know the effort that my coaches put in, and I want them to succeed so bad that I get that, even though I'm standing, 20 yards down the sideline and have
Really cool.
no real bearing into the game. So I try to just spin it and help kids to understand that, again, we all made mistakes. I made one of the biggest mistakes at the time,
Mhm.
that I could possibly make. It probably led to where I'm sitting today.
Yeah.
And another thing that I always tell, young coaches or people that are looking to get into the athletic director realm, or they have all these hopes and dreams. Some of these things that doesn't come easy.
Yeah.
I had 3 things that happened in my LCPS career that I was offered a job or promised something, or, things, thought that I deserved a job over somebody else. And I say, I'm so thankful none of those 3 happened, because I wouldn't be at Independence High School.
Totally.
If one of those 3 would have happened, it would have led me down a different path than I am now.
Yeah.
And so another perspective that I can try to give to my coaches or give to our kids, or, things like that, is life's not easy.
Yeah.
It's a winding.
Mhm.
Anybody that tells you that they went straight down the road at 100 miles an hour, you're probably lying to you.
Yeah.
So so that wrestling thing that happened my senior year, and
Wow.
I just built from that.
Wow, that's such
Yeah.
an incredible story. I really appreciate you sharing that one.
Yeah.
I think the other piece there, though, is, for myself, dude, some of the biggest mistakes that I've made, I've learned the most from, no doubt about it. But I'm sure that's the same for you. There was reflection there,
Yep.
right? There was a lot of time to really sit with yourself and go, okay, mistake then, lesson now, action today. This is what I want. This is informing my decision. So it's not to just be said that, hey, just live recklessly, give up on stuff and then good things happen, because I know that's not it. Like
No.
you sat and you learned from it. But again, it's our perception is so big here. And a mistake, losing a game, losing out on the ability to go to a certain school, you can look at it as, hey, it's happening for me. This is the opportunity to learn from, or you could look at it as the worst thing ever, and you're going to experience exactly how you perceive it. And when you're a part of a team and you're part of, and your coaches, the people you look up to, are consistently framing things every day as, lessons learned. Yeah, lessons learned, lessons learned. You begin to speak that language. I'm curious. I've learned a lot today already. What is next for Independence? What are you most excited about for this upcoming year and the future of the school that, now we understand that you've had a really big hand in shaping?
But I think my biggest excitement is we did a lot of winning. We were very successful last year. And I think that we have better things coming. We had a lot of programs that had a lot of underclassmen. We were not extremely senior heavy. Yeah. Obviously, we're going to miss our senior athletes, and there are some great senior athletes out there at Independence High School. But the majority of our programs, we weren't senior heavy.
Yeah.
So the sky's the limit for this school. The community buy-in, the athlete buy-in, just the whole family atmosphere. I think that we can just continue to build and get better. I think that, the 12 state titles that we have are great. And I think that we can add a bunch more to them in this upcoming year.
That's incredible. And I know, and I'm sure this is the way you're thinking about it. And I want to make this clear for listeners. You're saying we've had success, and I think we're going to have more success. And I know in your mind, that looks like people rising up to the standards. It looks like efficiency. It looks like the process. It looks like people lifting each other up. It looks like great conversations at the dinner table. It's not just the trophy at the end of the year, because I know that's not how you think. It's the day-to-day process. And I just want to acknowledge that. I'm assuming that's kind of what you see in your mind as you're talking. You're like, oh man, I can't wait to see people high-fiving, smiling, picking each other up.
That's right. Again, I mean, I had a conversation with a coach today, and he is trying to move his program into, the coaches are always hyped.
Yeah.
They're hyped. Great job, Mike. That was awesome. To get the kids involved in the hype. And because I think the kids really thrive off their peers.
Yep.
It's kind of cliche. The coach, the administration, everything, we're going to high five the kids in the hallway. We're going to do all those things, but it's trying to get these kids to root for each other and be excited for each other. So yeah, everything that you said, and on top of that, just continuing to build that culture of winning on, off the field, and in the classroom, and we do great things.
It's important. Culture is what is shaping our future leaders. It's maybe the best investment that we can make as the adults in the room to go put a great culture together for our student athletes. I am so thankful for the experience that I had at Broadway High School, but I would have loved to play at Independence and the environment that you've created. If you are a parent and you have your kids zoned for this school, you're lucky. If you're a young coach and you are aspiring to be a part of a great system, try to get in the door at Independence. And if you're, a competitor, heads up, things are looking good. And I just want to acknowledge all those things. And again, I'm inspired every time I meet an educator, somebody in an administrative role, leadership role that really cares, takes the time to understand the student experience, and to give more than they get. And I think you're an incredible servant leader and you do a phenomenal job. And I'm really, really grateful that we had the time to talk.
Perfect. I appreciate you. Thank you, sir. Yeah.